So I think it's 1 o'clock. I know people are still logging in, but I want to welcome everyone to this webinar. We will have a slow start while everyone else gets to log in over the next minute or two. My name is Lisa Dorner. I am an associate professor at the University of Missouri-Columbia, and this is a partnership between a national professional development project that I co-direct with Dr. Kim Song called SEE-TEL, Strengthening Equity and Effectiveness for Teachers of English Learners. And we are working with the NEE, Network for Educator Effectiveness here in the state of Missouri. And we are here to present this webinar and really hopefully have an interactive conversation as much as possible in this kind of technology we're working with these days. And we are going to talk about teaching English language learners and working with immigrant families from home, right? So education in the time of COVID-19 that we have right now here. So while we are having folks log on, I'm hoping that you can all see the screen that I am sharing. And I'm going to launch a poll. So while people are logging on, I hope that they will get this poll and see this poll. We want to know a little bit more about who we are talking to out there. So I'm going to launch poll number 1. What's your role in education? And you should see this poll pop up on your screen. And there's a multiple choice options there in terms of, are you an ESL or an English learner specialist teacher? Are you early childhood, elementary? Do you happen to be middle or high school? Are you a principal or assistant principal? Or do you work in some other kinds of capacities? So do you help our schools and our families as a social worker, a school counselor, an interpreter or translator, a family liaison? I am getting to see folks responding, and soon I will launch the poll so you can all see it as well. Lots of elementary teachers who I presume have English learners in their classrooms, and lots of English learner or ESL teachers, specialists out there. We've got everybody but high school teachers so far. There's a few of everything else. So I'll wait another minute or two while people log on and finish up this poll. I'll take this time too just to thank all of our educators out there, whether you're in the state of Missouri, where we're at, or across the United States or even elsewhere. If you somehow found out about this webinar, we just want to thank you really from the bottom of our hearts for all the work you're doing with families, for all the challenges that you've met and struggled with probably over the past month or two. It's been a while. So we do appreciate all you're doing, and we hope that even just sharing and chatting with us over the next hour, you get some inspiration and also just some camaraderie, right? Just hearing about the experiences here across Missouri and how we've been trying to meet those challenges. I think in the interest of time, I'll give another 15 seconds or so if you want to go ahead and let us know who you are. And then I'm going to end the poll and we can see. While we're also waiting and making sure everyone's logged in and can hear us okay, feel free to click on the Q&A button and go ahead and type in your questions, and we will hopefully have a chance to get to those today. We have our project coordinator for our grant project, Dawn Thiemann, is analyzing those questions today, and she will help us ask some of those to our expert panelists. Okay, so I am gonna share the results of our poll just so we can see who we are chatting with today. So most of us out there, about 50% of our attendees right now are English learner ESL teachers, but we do have a good number of elementary teachers as well. And I'm happy to see some principals, some school leaders, district administrators, and other out there. So thank you very much for joining us today. Okay, so as I said, my name is Lisa. I'm at the University of Missouri-Columbia. The principal investigator and co-project director of SEE-TEL is Dr. Kim Song, and you'll hear from her by the end of this webinar today. Dawn Thiemann is our program coordinator, and Curtis Jensen of the Network for Educator Effectiveness, as well as his colleague Kendra Christians, are all here supporting us today. We are lucky to have 3 expert panelists, as well as an expert from DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in Missouri, here with us today. So we'll get to hear some stories and tips and experiences from Katelin Andrews, who is an instructional coach at Garfield Elementary in Kansas City Public Schools. Cammy Goucher is our Missouri English Language Development and World Languages Director at what we call DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And Klocke, a Federal Programs Coordinator and Assistant Principal of Bayless School District, which is here in the St. Louis area. And then Sean Cochran, thank you very much for being here as well. In case there are any questions about compliance issues in particular, he is our expert at the state who can pop in and help us with those questions. So we're going to just do one more poll before we get into hearing from our panelists and the Q&A, because we want to know at this point really what has been the biggest challenge for you, the stickiest issue that you have been faced. And we did a needs assessment with the teachers that are involved in our grant project. And a lot of these issues were issues that came up. So, you know, a lot of people, it's the access to internet or technology, but also when we're faced with working with children, multilingual families, refugees, you know, we are faced with many challenges when we're right there in school with them. But now as we work online, how do we differentiate instruction? How do we meet federal mandates and state guidelines? How do we collaborate with others? So what do you feel like is the one kind of most challenging issue that you've faced in your context? And hopefully these are things that we will hear some ideas about as we move forward today in the webinar and even beyond. So thank you. If you've already filled that out and you're also still thinking about your Q&A, please feel free to put your Q&A in the Q&A box on the bottom by clicking that square at the bottom of your webinar screen. We've got about 80% of the people voting. I'll wait another 10 to 15 seconds and we have a sense of sort of what are those challenges. They seem pretty spread out at what I'm looking at so far. So I'm going to end the poll now and I'll share the results with you all. As we expected, student access to internet or technology continues to be one of our main challenges. There's some lucky districts out there that are one-to-one, but most of us are not. And even if you're one-to-one, there are still issues with internet access. Student knowledge or comfort differentiating instruction for our linguistically diverse students. So those 3 top ones, I hope I didn't skew the results by having those be our 3 top choices. But we do find, motivating students, finding or sharing resources. So there's a little bit of struggle almost on all of these fronts. So yes, we will be talking about a lot of these issues. Thank you for filling that out. So I'm going to move it on to the experiences and tips, and we are going to hear from Katelin Andrews first. So I'm going to go on mute, and we'll get to have another voice here in the mix. Katelin?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to my first webinar. I am one of the SEE-TEL instructional coaches Missouri public school system, and I also teach 6th grade ELL. And I decided during this time of distant learning, virtual learning, that it's time to step up my technology use and create my own Google Classroom. And using the WEDA standards and the Missouri Learning Standards, I created activities with my collaboration of teachers in the building that covers all 4 language domains. Definitely during the COVID-19 in collaboration, we need to be more creative and ways to motivate our students to complete work on their own and kind of be responsible for their learning, and also a lot more commitment between your grade level teams or your classroom teachers we are currently working with in our building. And when our district's saying, okay, we're going to district learning, they want us to start using what's called the PICRAT, and that is basically how you're going to incorporate technology. So one of our digital CIPD leaders keeps asking, what is the students' interactions with technology, and then how does the teachers' use of technology influence the traditional practice? And then on my slide, I linked a 5-minute video that we use in our district. So, and then I also always plan using the pick rack in my lessons. And like I said, I put my Google Classroom code for anybody that would like to join and see what I've been making. That covers the 4 language domains.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katelin. So we will be sharing this PowerPoint or these Google Slides as well as other resources. So you'll be able to click on these links later. I'm not sure exactly how the links work via the webinar at this very moment. So thank you. We will hear more from Katelin as we go through. I'm going to turn it over to Cammy so she can share a bit about what she's been doing or recommends during these times.
All right, and good morning or afternoon, everyone. I'm Cammy Goucher, and I am the new English Language Development and World Language Director at DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And my job is mostly to support teachers and districts and the students they serve throughout our state of Missouri. I'm a retired educator with over 30 years of experience. I taught reading, 5th grade, lots of summer school, and then for the last 18 or so years, I taught ESL or ELD and was a district coordinator. So I retired last year and then moved to DESE. I also acted as the technology trainer in our district, and I did a lot of flipped learning with my ESL students so that they could remain in their classrooms. So I was doing some of this online stuff before we actually were forced into it. So I have a little bit of experience with that, and I have a love for technology. I'm married to an IT person, so got some experience there as well. So one of the things I wanted to touch on is that I know that we're being asked to step up in ways that are probably unimaginable to us. And even though you may doubt yourself and the things you're doing, I want you to know that you are doing things well. I've been monitoring social media, and I look on district websites, and the things I'm seeing, we're doing well. So even if you feel overwhelmed and question yourself, know that you're doing things that teachers, that we see and that parents are appreciating. There's a lot of things right now we can't control, but if we're going to get through this, we have to focus on the things that we can. And one is the way that we present things to our students. And I know you're all worried about the interruption about children we're teaching, or that we teach, and the education that they might be missing. But that's not the biggest thing that we need to worry about right now. A lot of our English language learners, they come from interrupted learning situations, so they're familiar with that and they know how to cope and adjust. So they have some similar situations that they're used to, and they know how to survive. The kids that are missing instruction right now, though, they are learning, and they're learning other things. They're learning the lessons that I tried to teach in my classroom that were life lessons, real world applications. So they're seeing things. One of the things our students are learning are how to interact at home, how to cook, how to be online. So they are learning, and if there are gaps, then we'll work with those when that time comes. So my thought is focus on what's in your control. This is the message for us and our students, and that's why you're here today, so that you can get some more focus and some ideas. On my page here, my slide, I felt motivated when I looked at some of the questions that I had been getting, and I created a Wakelet for you to look at. It has an elementary and an upper grades example. And the thing I like about Wakelet, if you're unfamiliar with it, is you can use it on a telephone and everything opens right there within the app. So you can scan that QR code and it'll take you right to it. That's another way of sharing things. And then the second thing I created was another Wakelet just for you that has some of the professional development I've given over the years, and it tells you how to do all the things I shared in the first presentation for the students. I also encourage you to join our Edmodo group where we share things all the time. I curate that, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. And anytime that you'd like, you can email me at my email address there on the screen. All right, that's me.
Thank you so much, Cammy. I appreciate your words of wisdom from so many years of teaching. We're going to move to a quick chat just to have some interaction here, more interaction. We think most of you here are elementary teachers or ESL teachers, and when I've seen online, there have been creative ways to share, our favorite stories over the past month or two, whether that's recording a video, whether that's trying to do it synchronously with a group of kiddos, or maybe just sending ideas home to families. So if you want to click on the chat button and share with the group, with the whole group, the favorite book that you've used with your students or your families, or that you've wanted to use but maybe haven't had a chance to. Let's share some of those favorite pieces of literature. This is a great time to use our literary capacity to really understand what we're going through. So I thought that would be kind of fun to share. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kelly as you're typing in some of those responses. Kelly will unmute and share a little bit about her experiences.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Klocke. I am the Federal Programs Coordinator and Assistant Principal in the Bayless School District. A little bit about our district. We have about 50% of our students ELL, and we have over 47 languages represented. So we are very diverse. And we've been trying a lot of things during our e-learning time. I want to first share some successes because we have some amazing teachers and staff. One of my teachers in the EL department has actually been scheduling one-on-one reading time with some junior high and high school students, just to listen to them and again, make that connection. Cammy, I love what you said about the most important thing we can do for our kids is really make that connection with them. Another teacher on my team is sending letters to students and including a self-addressed stamped envelope for her kids to write her back, and she's gotten some letters back, and I think that's been the highlight of her day and probably the kids' days too. Another thing we've done, so we had to adjust not only how we've been teaching, but also meeting state requirements and federal requirements. So my team and I have been looking at how to adjust our monitoring forms, because we know at the end of the year, we kind of look at placement for the next year, and really the only thing we can measure right now is privilege. If our kids are able to access the internet and the assignments, and even if they can't, that may or may not have anything to do with their access of the English language. So that's something we kind of been working on, and communication has really been key for us in meeting the needs of our EL students. All of the grade level teams at the elementary have team meetings once a week that the EL teachers are invited to. The EL team has a meeting once a week, and these are all on Zoom. And we're all in constant communication with each other because, as you know, things change day to day, week to week. When we first thought we may not come back after spring break, we sent Chromebooks home with our families. We are not one-to-one, so how we kind of got around that was we sent computers home with families. And we gave priority to some of our junior high and high school kids who we knew would have to get credits for some of their dual credit classes. So some of our elementary kiddos shared. Charter also had a deal that they could get hotspots free for 60 days. So we took advantage of that and then started paying after that, which is expensive. It was about $40 a month for each hotspot. But that was a price we decided to go ahead and pay. I included a resource folder there. And if you look at the grade level folders, one of the things we really were looking at, which I saw a lot of you had the same problem, is how do we make contact with these kids? Like, how are we contacting our EL families and motivating them to do online work? So we have asked our teachers to kind of monitor every time they are making a contact with a parent, whether it be via email or phone call. And if they can't get a hold of that family, they also denote that in the contact form. And so then the next step, so if a teacher cannot get a hold of a family and they happen to be an ELL student, the EL specialist makes a second contact, records that in the contact graphic, the contact form, and then an administrator makes a contact. We use a phone translating service called Voyance, and luckily, because we have such a large EL population, all of our teachers were familiar with that. The EL team had previously made a how-to form, a how-to directions for teachers to use it. They also made an awesome video for the teachers to kind of walk through to see what that looks like. Us not being at school, that did require some of the Voyance, yes, that did require some of the teachers to kind of disclose their phone number, because you would have to add a call to get the interpreter and the family online, but our teachers have been super cool about being able to do that. In that folder also, the EL team included their own resources that had some translated lessons. And also we use Google Classrooms, and we also use Seesaw, which is an awesome resource that the EL team had previously been using for kids to have speaking practice and for kids to see their teachers talking and speaking. So our EL specialists are co-teachers on all of those classrooms. So instead of having their own classes, they kind of join with them, so then they can help the teachers kind of modify those lessons to be accessible for our EL students. And then in some cases, they assign lessons just to their own EL students, and that may take the place of something that the teacher has assigned to them. And you know, really, it's about accepting we can't make kids do lessons online. We can contact them 100 times, but we don't know what's happening in their house. I mean, this is trauma. Everybody's reacting differently. It may not be a big deal to some people, but some people just could be really scared and really freaking out. I talked to a parent, and he said he wasn't opening the door to his own brother. So, I mean, these people are, some of them, really, really scared. And you know, we just had to adjust what our expectations were. We had a kiddo who didn't complete any assignments for 2 weeks. So after the third or fourth contact that someone made, we finally heard back, and the kid did 2 math lessons the next week. So still no ELA lesson, but we had to celebrate that kid, because before they had nothing completed, and then those 2 math lessons were a huge deal for us. You know, and also, it's not just trauma for our students and families, but it's for our teachers and administrators as well. We've kind of worked on our PD being on the focus of taking care of our teachers, because they are working so hard, and they have kiddos at home, and they're posting, and they're really worried about their kids and their own families. So we've kind of made some time to do Zoom yoga lessons with our teachers. We have our PE teachers kind of leading those, and then we do a self-care Friday where teachers can kind of check in. And again, just trying to be gentle with each other. We have parents and families come up twice a week to pick up meals for their families, and those kids that we know are having a hard time, we're referring them to our social worker and having them follow up with those families and making sure that they have enough food to eat, that they have electricity, that they're still getting their needs met. A lot of those kids that were getting what they needed at school and aren't able to come to school and get that from our teachers and staff. So I know there's just a lot for us to think about. I included my email and my Twitter handle. By no means do we have all the answers at Bayless. Are we doing everything perfectly? Because we're still having these meetings and adjusting as we go. But I would be more than happy to try to answer any questions that anyone has. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate the reminder that not only are we taking care of our families and our students, but how can we collaborate amongst each other and take care of each other. So that's really helpful. Okay, we're going to jump into some Q&A. Again, be sure to type your own questions in the Q&A box. These are ones that have been posted by many and even touched on some by our panelists so far, but we'll start out with these and then these two, and then we'll move to Dawn to take a new live one from the audience. So how are you or your district reaching out to and speaking with your students' parents, especially English learner parents? So we'll start with Katelin, if you want to describe what that's looked like at your school so far.
When all this started happening, our principal made us like a big Google sheet of our kids in our buildings and by grade levels. And, we just had some ideas on how to get going. And we also used Voyance. The language line is what we call it at Garfield, at least we call it the language line. Then we use talking points as well. We also our district created Google Voice numbers for all of us to have. So I have a Google Voice app on my phone, and sometimes I get phone calls at 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning from my students asking for help. So that's been interesting. And then I also been contacting our parent liaisons in our language services department for helping too, because our Burmese and Karen parent liaison, and she knows a lot of the families through church and outside activities. So if I can't get a hold of somebody, I may contact them because they do see our families outside of district things. And then the next question, how are EL teachers collaborating with classroom and content teachers? My principal also is having grade level PLCs every week. I participate in 3 grade levels, 2nd, 5th, and 6th as a ELL representative for them. We do that through Zoom, and somehow if Zoom's not working, sometimes we'll just call each other and figure out that way, because sometimes technology is not always working. Our department, the ELL department, has check-ins with our resource teachers twice a week. They either, if you have a question about something that the district sends out, or you need help or an ideas, they use that as well. But definitely, I try to call. I have 43 kids on my caseload this year, and so I try to call at least 5 or 6 of them a day and see if they need help with assignments, not only with my Google Classroom assignments, but the other 6th grade teachers I work with as well.
So that's really helpful. Could you tell everyone, in case they're not familiar with what talking points is?
Talking points, I use the text message side of it. I've only used it a few times. It's when, for instance, we have food distribution, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 2. I'll text that, and then it will text that family into their home language or their first language. And then sometimes the parents will text back or call me back. They have that Google Voice number of mine and ask more questions and things like that. But it's really easy once you build your database type, your number.
Right. So it'll build the database per, you mark out which language each family has at home.
Yeah.
And then it'll send it out within those languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's really super, super helpful to hear that technology is there. Cammy, do you have anything to add to those particular questions on the slide right now?
Well, we do have on the Missouri DESE website supports for remote teaching and learning. And there are some links for all of the different content areas, including ESL or ELD. And then as far as how teachers are collaborating, again, I've looked through the various districts' websites just to see what everyone's doing. And one that I was really impressed with is they had all of the teachers' names listed on their website, where the students could log on to the district website and click their teacher's name, rather than everything going home or having to worry about mass emails to their parents and everything. If they had more than one child, they could just go on and click the teacher's name rather than getting all those things. And I thought that was very well organized. And the teachers themselves could collaborate that way and click on each other's links to see what they were teaching and add more information. So looking at different districts' approaches to this, Hollister had a really cool website where they posted a calendar and they're doing activities every week. Down in Cape Girardeau area, they partnered with PBS and they were broadcasting classes on the television at certain times every day so that there are lessons. So getting around that, not having the technology. So there are a lot of innovative things. And again, join one of our social networking groups and connect with each other, because we are our own, we know a lot, we can get a lot from each other.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I hadn't heard about the PBS collaboration, but I had heard that some schools and districts were using radio and or sometimes TV to also reach out. That's excellent. Dawn, do we have a question, a new question that's come in that's a little bit different maybe than these posted so far?
Yes, we do. And this question came in. In my small school district, I am the only EL instructor, so I have students in every grade from K through 12. I really do not know how I can help them right now. Any suggestions? Maybe we could start with Cammy.
Well, again, I think something where you have it more centralized, or perhaps take your caseload and contact those teachers to see how you can collaborate with them. The fewer people, I think, trying to send information to our English language learners' parents, the less they're having to deal with, because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for us, but it's even more overwhelming to people who don't speak the English language. So and the more we can do to support them and make it easier for them, I think the better.
Yeah, Kelly, do you have anything to add to how your district has maybe handled that? You know, at the upper grade levels, I'm imagining that's the same thing, where you may have multiple teachers working with multiple grade levels, potentially.
We do, especially the secondary side. We have 2 EL teachers, and we have, you know, each of them probably has about 50 or 60 kids on their caseload. And Cammy, again, great point. They are working with the teachers to kind of help them modify. And just like we would on regular assignments, letting ELs do a fewer number of problems that demonstrate the same skills, taking out some of the language, but showing mastery of the standard. You know, things like that, and just making those phone calls. That teacher, the EL teacher, may have a better relationship with some of those families than the classroom teacher, so maybe taking the place of making that contact, because again, it does get overwhelming for the families, and that's why, you know, that's the second person that may make a contact with them. But there's no way that one teacher is going to be able to do lessons specifically for every kid at every grade level, especially during this time. And that's another, you know, go easy on yourself. No one has all the answers of how to support every EL during this time, because none of us have ever done this before. But again, the same kind of supports you would do for different grade levels on those lessons that are going to be on Google Classroom or Seesaw or whatever platform you guys are using would probably be the best way to support them, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a matter of really trying to communicate with your own principals and teachers about how to figure out, like, for which students, now that we've come to this point, you know, for which students does the EL teacher maybe have those clear connections, and maybe they're the first contact point, right? Like Katelin was saying, some the liaisons in your case, right, have that closest connection with the family. And I think Kelly said, right, so sometimes the ESL teacher or the EL teacher has those close connections. If classroom content, homeroom teachers are having a hard time connecting, maybe for certain students, those are the ones that the EL teacher can be the first one to reach out, right? But not to overwhelm with too many contacts, but also not to overwhelm the EL teacher herself or himself to be having to do it all for everybody, because it just can't work the same way. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. That's a great question. Dawn, is there another one we want to?
Yes, and we had a couple so I'm going to reword a little bit to merge both of them. But one of the two-part question is, what is your plan for the next school year? And will you have your students move on to the next grade, or will they be held back? So if it sounds to me like this is rather related to compliance. So Cammy or Sean, do you want to start with that?
Well, I can start with that, sure. I mean, that's really a district classroom parent teacher decision as far as holding back or promoting. It's not necessarily a compliance thing. So there's a lot of factors that would go into a decision like that. And so that's really going to be a decision that's made locally as far as retention or promotion.
All right, thank you. Kelly, has your district or Katelin had any discussions about this?
We have. I saw someone just posted that they're doing hold harmless. We're doing that too. We're not assigning grades at this time. Students can raise their grades, but they can't lower them due to inactivity or just not completing them. At this point, everyone's going on to the next grade level, and how that's going to look in the fall is unclear. We're still probably like all of you developing plans for what summer school may look like. I imagine, and this is just guessing, that we're going to have to spend some time in the fall figuring out what standards we need to teach from the previous year, which we kind of do anyway. And there's some, we'll have to go revisit the curriculum and really address those priority standards and kind of cut down on anything that's not absolutely essential for those kids to know before they go on to the next grade level. So we're probably going to have to relook at curriculum in all areas when those kids go to the next grade level and have missed, 2.5 months of school.
And DESE is also working on guidance for when school starts back up, so you can keep an eye on our website for that when it becomes available.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. I know the districts that my own children go to also have the hold harmless, but they're trying to figure out exactly what Kelly said, how they're going to figure out summer school and try to work on some of those content areas. Okay, so I think it's time for another quick chat and hearing a little bit more, maybe especially for those ELD, English Language Development, or ESL specialists out there, coaches, and from our leaders, right? So what's one inspirational or heartwarming experience you've witnessed recently? Something that you just want to share just to help us all understand that, yes, we're facing these challenges in some way. And it can just be a fun, quick story that you wouldn't mind sharing with the group. And while you're chatting in some ideas there, you can also be continuing to put in the Q&A box your questions. Here's the next pair of questions that we found has been out there. This first one: how can I make online grade level work comprehensive for students designated as English learners? So what kind of tips do we have in particular to help with this creation of online learning and content? We've already heard some, especially from Cammy on this, I think, and Katelin. But Kelly, if you want to jump in, and I think you maybe hit on this already a little bit too, but if you have any other thoughts on what you're doing to make that online work comprehensible for our linguistically diverse kids.
Sure. So to be more specific, we have Elevation as a resource that sends out monitoring forms, and it has a ton of professional development on there that's embedded for classroom and content teachers to help them modify lessons. And then we are also a SIOP district, so all of our teachers have been trained in SIOP, which is Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. And one of the main purposes of SIOP is to make content comprehensive for all learners, especially EL learners. So there's a lot of stuff on the web for that. So if you want to look at SIOP and just kind of give some tips and tricks to your classroom teachers to help them sort of make those modifications for ELs, that would be one place to start. You know, there are so many things, like make a vocabulary bank, reduce the number of choices, use fewer language, more videos, more pictures for those kids. I think them being able to see their teacher's face, giving shorter directions may help make the content comprehensible for them. You know, if you're an ELL teacher, you know, a lot of that stuff that you learned when you were in school can apply to online learning too. You just have to kind of make it work.
I have
Katelin,
another,
can
yeah,
you
I have
add-
another kind of tag along of a few things that Kelly said. I like create a hyperdoc lesson, and then I shared this with Dawn, and then talk about the I can statement. But then I give myself a screencastify where they hear my directions and they see me kind of model each of the writer's workshop. And then the kids, I think, are more comfortable if they click on the directions on my screencastify, and then they'll start working. A couple of them have already turned that assignment in, even though it's not due till I think next week. I think I gave them 2 weeks to do it because they are sharing computers at home. I'm going to start doing number talk videos, which is a number sense like little workshop we do for our SLIFE kids and our newcomers. So I'm going to start doing those so the kids can start seeing our faces as well. And then I think I'm also pretty lucky that before all this happened, 6th grade and 5th grade at my building have been using Google Classroom since we started departmentalized. So like the whole turning in assignments and clicking on slides and Google Sheets, they've been doing that already. So I'm pretty lucky that I've been in a building that is familiar with Google Classroom. And so all they had to do is wait for their devices, which rolled out today at our school. So hopefully more kids will be getting on and completing our assignments. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. In different ways, I think most district and folks that I've talked to, something helped them move into this, right? So whether it was having previous experience with Google Classroom or having really close relationships with immigrant families through different engagement activities they've done. So building on whatever it is in your own context that has that prior, connection or work or resources has really been helpful. Cammy, did you have something to add to that question too?
Yeah, I was going to say, going back to the Wakelet lesson that I created, one good thing there, it has immersive reader, and I don't know if you're familiar with immersive reader, but it reads everything that you type into the students, and it can be translated to other languages. So it's built into that platform as well. You just click on it and it reads it and it translates it to the students, which is really great. And I wanted to piggyback on what Kelly said. We need to remember our can-dos. We need to make sure we incorporate the access scores, but we don't want to focus on that overall score. We want to look at the individual domains. So when you're sending home packets or when you're designing online things, make sure that for the student, if they're high in reading, they may not need as many supports, but if they're a low writer, you're going to have to do some of those visuals, some of those other things that can be helpful. And one thing for writing that I've read somewhere and I thought this is wonderful is have your students keep a journal, because right now the journals they're keeping, they're curating history. 20, 30 years from now, when we look back at it, they'll have that recording of what it was like when we went through the pandemic that came through America. So they're writing history, and kind of reiterate that to them, that what they're writing, even if it's drawing pictures, if they're putting something daily down in a journal, what a rich language experience that is. and they are curating history.
Yeah,
But again,
I love that idea. And even asking students to do that. I mean, these are young kids. Some of you teach preschool, early elementary school ages, drawing pictures, or even just an audio recording if they do have a device, a phone, or whatever device maybe has been sent home from school. We can ask them to audio record in their home languages, right? What's your daily life like? I actually asked my daughter that yesterday to do, and I recorded it because I thought of that idea of sort of marking this point in time in history. And it's a way we can use translanguaging, we call it, right? So bringing out multiple languages and resources that kids have, whether it's drawing, their home language, other ways of speaking and doing things, we can have them express that. I do know that the Missouri Historical Society and I think the Missouri History Museum here in the St. Louis area are all collecting different kinds of diaries or journals or these curated stories from people. So that's another thing teachers could think about doing depending upon the age level and inspiration of your kids if you want to submit that sort of thing. Dawn, do we have another question, like a recent one that's come in that we might want to throw out here? And don't forget to unmute.
No, there is no new questions in the Q&A. We have some former questions. And I believe the slide asked to put them in the chat, so I don't know if someone wants to check the chat box.
Okay, yeah, we can check the chat box too for some questions. But is there any that you wanted to throw out, or we'll go to the motivation question? I know that's been a big one.
Yes, I would say.
Yeah, I've been looking at some of the questions on chat.
Okay, Curtis, yeah, if you want to throw one out there.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of, I guess, a theme of questions on, and this has been touched on a little bit, but maybe we can go a little deeper on just keeping students engaged, especially while they're, on the Zoom or while you're teaching them the lessons. What are some tricks that our panelists would have just to keep those kids engaged?
Yeah, that is great. I saw a news story go by the other day about student classroom management is a whole new thing when you're talking about either managing an asynchronous, sending home videos and assignments, or trying to do something via Zoom. So have any of our teachers there on the panel and school leaders had some experience with engagement? Cammy, it looks like you clicked off. We'll have everybody answer this one. Motivation and engagement. How do we do it?
One thing that I want to repeat again is make it real for them. So find things that they're going to be doing at home and incorporate learning into that, whether it's cooking with your family. And one thing big for ESL, ELD teachers is thematic teaching. So have a theme. My lessons that I created was all about farming. So it had animals, plants, using the things you grow in the garden and cooking with them. So things that get them actively involved and get their families involved and that are real, that aren't abstract at this point, things that they probably are going to push new curriculum, because it's not going to be easy for parents to do that. And it's not going to be able to as easy to do it without that face-to-face interaction. So find things that can make the learning interesting and applicable and real in this time. That's my biggest point.
Thank you. Yeah, Katelin?
So I've been motivating some of my higher ELL kids. I've been wanting to reclassify/exit the program for about 2 years now. And I said, this is your time to show us your commitment to your schoolwork. This is your time to say that you can master these first 3 quarters standards and practice it daily. And if you need help, they all have our Google Voice numbers, or they all can participate in our once a week. We call them like science homework help, math homework help, reading homework help. They can come in, hop onto those Zoom meetings once a week if they need help. So those kids have been wanting to exit or reclassify from the department and not take the access test anymore. This is, some of them are, getting motivated through that. Also for my younger, like my lower kids, my beginners, my newcomers, and all my kids really in 6th grade. I've been sending them like birthday cards or miss you cards and things like that. So about once a week, I sit down in my little crafting corner in my house and I make them little cards, like miss you cards. And I mean, they're not fancy Hallmark cards, but you know, I have stamps and flare pens and, you know, just trying to say I miss you, and if you need me, we're here for you. And also encourage summer school. I said, just in case, you know, we missed a while. We missed a lot of, like Kelly said, we missed about 2 months, a bunch of, you know, for us, about a month without a device for some of these kids. So they had no access to any of our Google Classroom. So we're just trying to motivate the kids as much as we can. And we're going to come up a way to do like a 6th grade promotion graduation. I think we might do a car parade or a Zoom something. We're still planning, but I think that might help some of our 6th graders too. Like, hey, you're still going to have a 6th grade promotion, but you got to do the work too. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's great. I love the personal touch and ideas with the cards. Kelly, do you have anything to add to that hasn't been mentioned? Or if anybody has things specifically about even managing the synchronous time with students, so whether it's on Zoom or something like that, how do you motivate within those spaces too?
I don't have a whole lot to add because I think Cammy and Katelin had some really great ideas. I love the card thing too. I think that's so sweet. And the biggest motivator for our kids really is that one-on-one teacher relationship attention. They miss their teachers so much. They miss their friends. And we have just amazing teachers at Bayless. We had a teacher that was delivering Happy Meals to kids to congratulate them, doing one-on-one tutorials. Again, I had that teacher that was writing letters. And as far as Zoom, there was a comment that, you know, as much as you try, some kids are going to be jumping on their bed and rolling around on the floor, which is, it's real, you know, and we at the elementary, they have weekly class meetings, but other than that, they don't do a lot of Zoom face-to-face meetings. I know the secondary side does, and I hope that they're not jumping on the bed and rolling around on the floor, but I don't know that for a fact. So I think I'm open to suggestions on that too. If you have a bunch of kids in a Zoom meeting. And also I like what Lisa said about building on not only your strengths as a district, but the strengths from the kids. Maybe Cammy said this too, something the kids are really into anyway. One of the assignments on Seesaw, they asked the kids to make videos, and there was a little girl making like a tutorial. Now she spent 5 minutes scrolling through her phone, trying to call her best friend, doing all this other stuff, but she submitted an assignment and she was engaged doing that. So I know our, you know, making videos, making TikToks is really popular with our kids. So anything like that keeps our kids engaged and wanting to actually do the assignment. So I don't know if that helps, but that's something that our teachers are using.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really helpful. So I think, before we conclude, Dawn or Curtis, is there one other question out there, or have we hit most of the big ones?
I think we hit most of the big ones.
Dawn, was there anything else?
Yes, we do. We had 2 come in. And the first is related to state requirements. I'm going to turn this over to Cammy or Sean. But some of the state requirements that ELD teachers are required to do will be difficult in this current situation. Will there be an extension or waiver?
So yeah, Sean, go ahead.
Well, which requirements are we speaking of? It's a little difficult to ask, pretty general there to answer that question.
Do you think they might be meaning like how many minutes? Like typically, right, there's a guideline or an idea of how many minutes ELD English learner teachers need to have with students. Is it something like that perhaps?
Possibly testing?
Or testing?
Our
Maybe
testing
classification requirements, like the writing samples or something like that, or speaking or observation rubrics.
Yeah. We don't have required minutes in the state of Missouri. So as far as reclassification, we just finished and completed all of our testing. So you'll have your testing results on the normal timeline. And you can utilize what you had before then. You can utilize writing samples and things that you're collecting now to help you make that judgment, or you can wait until school starts and do some sort of assessment and reclassify them at the beginning of the school year. It does not have to be done before the school year begins.
Well, just some basic information we've received recently from the U.S. Department of Education is that we know that any civil rights requirements will not be waived. So that means we have to continue to teach children English who are lack the proficiency. We know that is something that can't be waived. So you have to continue to identify students, and we have posted some information on our website, on Cammy's website, through the ELD page. Also went on a listserv on some provisional guidance on identifying students, but that is something you're going to still have to do, is identify those students. Still going to have to provide them with language instruction, as Cammy said. The access testing was already completed, and all the MAP testing and content assessments were canceled for the year. So no, those things we're not going to make you do them this summer or anything like that. And anything else, if it's more specific to that, we really would appreciate you just asking us, maybe with an email, so we can really hit exactly what you're asking us about.
And then we had another question related to the participant wanted to know how or if anyone is reaching out to their local refugee agencies and connecting them with families. Are they having any success in doing that?
There was something that I posted in the PD part of my Wakelet. There is a link to a national service that provides assistance for immigrants. I don't remember what the company, it was based out of California. So there is assistance to immigrants, even unregistered immigrants, that is addressed in that publication. Sean, you want to talk anything else about immigrants?
Oh, I think you're on mute still, Sean, if you were trying to say something.
Immigrants, refugees, the question was generally, are they reaching out to them? We hope you are. We hope you are reaching out to those groups that are advocating for refugees and immigrants that are in your communities.
Yeah, so I think maybe if, I don't know, then if Kelly or Katelin have any specific stories about how you, as a district, your district has partnered maybe with any local organizations in terms of giving extra support. I know the International Institute here in the St. Louis area has, even over the past 2 months, settled about 140 refugee families. And so I imagine, right, that our refugee families like that are needing, you know, they're brand new to the country. They're having all those settlement kind of concerns and support coming from an organization, but in a very strange time. So yeah, are there ways that your district has maybe partnered with organizations in terms of providing that first level of education to families when they're not in the school?
I know our district works with JVS, or it's a local agency here. Each family is given kind of like a counselor, and they kind of either do it by language or where they live in our district. But I'm sure they're doing something. And then like our global SE, which is our soccer organization, our students participate in, they've been posting videos how they're helping these kids during this time, like providing food and clothing. I've been watching and keeping up with them through Facebook because it's fun to see my students, because a lot of them do play soccer, and so they've been practicing their soccer skills and whatever you call it. I don't know much about soccer, but I know we have our families in our districts that are those refugees are seeking sources. And I'm sure if a classroom teacher came up to me and asked, how's this family doing, I could reach out to JVS or our district leaders in our department and find out more. Everybody has my cell number at my school, so they know they can reach out to me.
Thank you. Yeah, is there anything else? Kelly, would you like to add, or anyone before we finish up on that particular question?
And we did have one more question come in.
Well, it's like 2 o'clock, so I think maybe we'll try to grab that question and maybe send some answers
Okay.
over the resources. But go ahead, Kelly.
My answer is very similar to Kaylin's. We had those families kind of set up with resources before this happened, and we've had 8 new ELs enroll since we've gone to e-learning. And so whenever we have an EL family enroll, they kind of fill out some documentation to indicate if they may be an immigrant or refugee family, and then those names go to our social worker, and they kind of hook them up with the various services we have in St. Louis.
Okay, yeah, and so to Sean's point, right? So we're still enrolling new students even during this time, and we still have to do the home language survey. We still have to figure out whether or not and what kinds of services they might need. So that is still the civil rights requirements that we want to do, but that we are also compelled to do. Well, let me take this opportunity then to thank you all, our panelists, and Dawn and Curtis for helping us manage the questions as well. Dr. Kim Song, if you want to conclude the webinar today, that would be great.
Well, we will conclude our webinar. I like to say just 2 seconds. One thing to the teachers, and lots of love and lots of applause, how difficult it could be, but have fun. And then one more thing is maybe adding some singing to, you know, cheer up the kids. And the other thing is gestures, lots of gestures, and bring the kids in. Administrators, please be a co-constructor when you make any package with teachers and families. Thank you so much for this opportunity to meet you. And then we're going to share our recorded MP3 things, so you guys can kind of roll over. The other thing I think the SEE-TEL is planning to do is we're going to make some packets with the resources besides what you have on this PowerPoint. Thank you so much, and have a great day and stay safe.
And maybe we can all unmute and applaud all our teachers and educators out there, as well as our panelists. So everyone unmute and we'll have a round of applause. It's good to have this interaction. So thank you again. We will be posting these resources, and as all the panelists said, please reach out to any of us at any time. Thank you all so much.